Thank you, Chloe. I'm not as billed. The chap who was meant to be here, unfortunately, couldn't make it, so I'm standing in. But it sounds like a fun session. I'm really excited to be here, and I've never done one of these before, so I think it's going to be interesting to see how the format goes. So, as we say, more recently, the last few years, I've been specializing in interim work. So that means I pitch up at places, and I rarely have the perfect set of toolkits to judge the marketing campaigns or e-com success by. So very quickly, you learn to evaluate what you've got and then get everyone to buy into and get agreement on what good looks like. And, you know, one of my key sayings is never let the perfect get in the way of good when it comes to measurement, because quite frankly, there are some amazing systems out there, but most retailers at this point in time don't have the very expensive capex to get those deployed. So there are some fabulous agencies, there are some great partners where, quite frankly, even doing Google well and Google Marketing Platform can give you some great results. So my first thing to how do you measure across all the platforms? As I've worked for many multi-channel retailers, this is a really difficult question, and there is no one single point of, there is no one point solution that helps you do that. If you have Salesforce Marketing Cloud and it's fully deployed, then there's a chance you can do this. But I think my first recommendation is always know your customer, because if you know your customer and you understand their journey across all your touch points and all the points of purchase in your brand's journey to check out, whether it be online, in-store, at pop-up events or whatever, you've got a chance of knowing where the critical success factors are in measuring to get that from a browse, a brand consideration to purchase. So I always like to be really clear on what we're going to be measuring. And that's just not for me to know internally of what I'm setting as a goal for myself. It's to get buy-in from the finance team, the buying and merchandise team, the retail team, the e-com team, the marketing team. So everyone is utterly clear on what success is going to look like. I think my second point is really try and keep it simple. If you try and do very over-complex attribution models where you're trying to do that, we're quite brutal at Fanatics. I currently work for Fanatics. We're the world's largest sports apparel licensed sports apparel, and we work with all the football clubs. We work with the American sports federations, and Ryder Cup we've just done. So we're doing a lot of digital marketing through my friends at NMPI, and we were driving digital marketing to get people at the event at the Ryder Cup in Paris to go and visit our pop-up tent, where we sold £7 million worth of merchandise in 5 days. So, you know, that's not going to convert through a web or a mobile app. It was actually through a physical till at the event. So I think we could just be really clear from the outset across different brands, different experiences, what measures will we measure and what will success look like? And then always share those goals and objectives, because so many times I go into organizations and you see people where the goalposts change. But we really wanted you to do that, or that's not what we thought you were measuring. So I think just be really clear, and it's always better to face into those difficult things up front and say, do 2 or 3 things really well rather than try and boil the ocean. And I think once you've got that, it's about making sure you know your stocks. You have to go outside your area, because actually for you to be successful, you need the right merchandise in the right place at the right times. You need the supply chain on fire. We're all planning for Black Friday and Christmas peak at the moment. So that really, you've got to plan for success. And I say, if you if you don't plan, then you got to be prepared to fail, because it requires massive cross-functional effort, just not saying afterwards, this worked, that didn't. So then thirdly, in terms of looking how to optimize your marketing tools to work harder, to show more ROI, the one thing I'm always very keen to do these days is use the customer as a measure of success. So even if you have to do it manually through a data extraction, or someone who's good with SQL, take your order management and look at a single customer view of what's the customer worth, how active are they, so that you can actually identify the problem. You know, if I've been told to increase sales by 20%, where's that 20% going to come from? Is it finding 20% more new people? Is it increasing my AOV by 20%? Is it increasing my conversion by 20%? There's just a few key levers you can push and pull. And you've got to really know your metrics, and you've got to work with your colleagues cross-functionally to make sure it's a joined-up effort. So for me, the one thing that is absolutely true is, what did the customer do at the end of it? At the end of the season, at the end of the campaign, at the end of the year, what was the value of the customer, and how many are active in that year? So lifetime value, and also these days, Net Promoter Score is really important. Making it effortless for your customers to deal and interact with your brand at any touch point is critical. So a Net Promoter Score is one very simple but very good metric to do that. And if anyone's got Bazaar Voice or FIFO or any of the reviews on their site, it's very easy to extract that data. So again, just know what you want to track and measure. And then I think the fourth question we've been posed to discuss at the tables is, which media innovations will offer retailers the best ROI by 2020? Now, who knows what's going to happen this year, next year in retail at the moment, the way the market's going. But looking forward, there's a few things I've certainly got my eye on and I'm seeing working well now. Paid social will become even more mainstream. And the ability, because of the unique interaction with things like Facebook or Instagram, where you know people's interests, you know their passion, it's a very emotional environment in which to talk to customers. And you can actually use the data to audience build. I think that's going to probably be the second sort of Google mainstream channel, certainly within the next 2 years, if it's not already for you. New marketing tech, such as BounceX or Conversant, where these are new pay-as-you-go services, and they can identify customers cross-channel who may open their email on a mobile, but then go to a desktop later, but then go in store. If you've got all those touch points and you can see that behavior across your digital channels, they're doing some really new and exciting stuff to retarget people where you might not have an email, but it's still GDPR compliant. So I think those techs like BounceX are very exciting. And then I think in store, anything you can do to track and tie back a store visit to any online and digital activity you do really helps. And I think the impact of a great physical customer experience, whether that's a pop-up event or in a physical store, is a really important matter. So depending on your audience as well, their age, their demographics, offline, DRTV, social, and YouTube video are important for the higher levels of the funnel. But again, all those things are measurable now. So seeing more and more Sky TV, DRTV that can track to subscriber bases. And I think that's going to be really interesting. You know, Salesforce we can't all afford, but if you look at Salesforce Marketing Cloud and how they track customer journeys now, if you can find a way of mimicking that any manual way you can, it's just a really good discipline to help you think better about improving your customer experience. So with that, you know, the final question is, how can retailers be more creative with marketing campaigns through partnerships? We heard this morning, if you're in the keynote, about Alibaba. And we work with Alibaba in China for the NFL and Man U and Real Madrid. And it's a very important way because people don't use direct-to-consumer sites in China. They go through JD and Tmall. So that's a really important partner for us. But also using networks, communities, building those and other great brands that you have an affinity with. So our young footballers, their favourite food brand is Nando's pre or post a match. People who are coming to the NFL this weekend have to get airline tickets and hotels here. People who book games to matches sometimes would go through Ticketmaster if it's American sports. So it's finding out which other brands you can partner with to access people who are interested in your category or your target audience. So I think those are just a few of the things that I've sort of thought about in those questions. What I'd love to do now is ask you on your tables just to sort of think about those, maybe just pick one to debate amongst the people on your table, and I'll come around and for the next 15 minutes have something to say on one of those, and then I'll ask randomly someone to stand up and just have an opinion if they think quite strongly about one of those topics. Now, hopefully, I'll come back and just summarize your view on the topics. Is that okay? Great, thank you. Sorry to break up the conversations. It sounds like there's some really great conversations happening out there. But we've got a mic at the back, and we're just going to randomly come around some of the tables. So if someone's feeling brave, as a lovely assistant over there stands with the mic, and just gives us what the one issue you've sort of debated or you think you can add some value for the colleagues in the room, that would be great.
Hello.
Good.
So we're from a gaming company called Green Man Gaming, and one of the media channels that we find increasingly important as time goes forward is influencers, and channels where they don't perhaps lend themselves to performance marketing metrics too easily. So one of the things we're debating is how you attribute revenue in a world where awareness and kind of visibility is becoming as important as that direct revenue attribution, and how you convince businesses internally to spend in those sort of areas.
Fantastic, thank you. Table behind?
Well, actually, along the same lines, we did talk about, if you had somebody doing sort of video content that wasn't directly driving conversions, I don't know, you run a luggage company and you have somebody producing video content showing you how to pack your bag best for holiday, that it's not driving conversions, but it is increasing sentiment. How do you sort of defend the money that you're spending on that? It's similar to influencers, really, on that kind of content. You talked about Net Promoter Score, I think is kind of an overall, you could look at brand sentiment, but some of those things as a marketer, we're often defending the money that we're spending and the decisions that we're making. And I think along with influencers, that's a hard one to track. We didn't get an answer. Sorry.
No, I think
unicorn in the forest, a lot of this, isn't it?
No, I think sometimes with the content, when it's really brand content or service driven, sometimes the honest thing is just to say how much budget you need to do that service element, because a lot of customer satisfaction these days is driven by people having an effortless customer experience, you answering all the questions they've got, you giving them great engaging content to keep coming back to your site. And sometimes that's just a brand cost. So I think, it's just having those really honest conversations with the wider finance team and business team as to what you can measure and what the agreed success of that is. Sometimes it's just page visits to that view or dwelling on that page, I found in the past, can help. Okay. Anyone got another point of view they would like to raise there? I think someone was talking earlier. This table here? Mm-hmm.
Well, it was just an interesting point, and it came up early in the conversation that Dave here mentioned. That was, how do you account for the customer lifetime value in your business, and how should you measure that over what period of time, and how should that therefore influence the decisions that you're making? If you're a new business, maybe you need to accept that you're going to make a loss on that first, maybe second, maybe even third sale, but have confidence that over a period of time you're going to make that money back in a lifetime value.
Yeah, I think my experience there is retail's pretty brutal at the moment. And if I suggest, when I worked in catalogs many moons ago or mail order, and sales per customer per season were a key measure. These days, I now work with a CPO, cost per order, and that way it doesn't limit my budget, provided I can bring in new customers at that agreed level of marketing investment. And then that means we can be really focused specifically in our performance channels to drive the maximum new number of, the maximum traffic and the maximum sales to that channel. So sometimes that I've found is really helpful. But then to actually understand your customer and how, is your business a business that has very high repeats? If it's furniture and you sell beds, as I've done in the past, you might have a customer buy a new bed every 8 years. And unless you've got all the bed linen to go with it, that's really, you've got to do it on the cost of that. But you might have a £2,000 order. So your allowable CPO on an order like that would be different to if you're doing a one-off box of chocolates as a gift, but people buy that every month for different members of their family. So I think you just have to really know your customer, know how your customer behaviors and segments by frequency and recency of purchase, and then set your marketing to that. Unless, of course, you have a fabulous marketing tech stack and it spews that out for you. Someone down here like to say what you were talking about?
Got to get around the chairs. Yes, on our team, we were looking at, first of all, identifying what you need to, is it awareness? Is it consideration? Is it purchase intent? And knowing where you sit versus your competitors to even start with, what would you use as your channel to get your message out, and whether it would be something at the lower level, a bit more targeted, a bit more personalised, or are you looking for more advertising awareness? So we never actually made it past that piece.
No, and I think the top of the funnel, that's why I say be really clear and know what your objectives are at the start of when you have your measurement discussions. Because if you're a fairly new brand and you've got a very low base, people won't know what your brand stands for, your why. So part of the reason, how are you going to build your brand awareness and customer engagement? And it could be a brand tracking study is the actual measure. But as you go further down the funnel, then obviously you've got traffic, conversion, click-throughs, and order and customer value. So I think that's part of the thing, looking at the whole picture and being just really clear what the measures are and what success looks like. Anyone else have any other issue they'd like to share, or solution, or thought? No? Well, I think we're just running out of time. I think to sum up, I think no one finds this stuff easy, and I think most retailers at the moment, there's very few that have the very deep pockets to buy the sort of Formula One solutions that go the multi-channel tracking and customer attribution. But I think if you don't let the perfect get in the way of the good, and you choose to do things in small bite-sized chunks, and you have a framework of continuous test and learn and optimization, that's really important. And I think just thinking about the tasks you're trying to do, you can't do everything with your marketing budget. You've got to be very specific and targeted. So just being really clear and sharing those with the people across your teams is going to set people up for success and enable you to measure a few things really well, and then win confidence that actually you do know what you're doing, you are getting the results. And to test some hypothesis that actually, will this actually work for that? So the joy of anything involving digital marketing is you can test and learn very dynamically with A/B and multivariate testing. But and quite simple tools like Google Analytics these days, it really is quite good and robust. You don't need the full suite. So thank you for your time. Unless anyone else has got any last questions, I think that sort of wraps up this session. Thank you.